Welcome to Free Burn. This is Matt Ballard, your host. This is the podcast where we talk all things mental and behavioral health in the first responder community. Real life firefighters, police officers, EMTs and paramedics, clinicians, and doctors. It's time we have the real conversation and burn the stigma behind first responder mental health, one podcast at a time. And welcome back, folks. This is Matt Ballard of Free Burn 2023, your host. Today we're going to sit down with Amber Ramirez. She is a 15-year total fire service. She currently works for Grapevine Fire Department 11 and a half years. Married for 14 years, has one daughter. Holds the rank of driver engineer and is on Grapevine's honor guard and peer team. Welcome, Amber.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Pretty
absolutely.
good.
So yeah, we've talked a little bit beforehand and just kind of got your story. Good story. I think it's going to be very impactful. So, you ready to do this?
I'm as ready as I'm gonna be. So
Okay.
So
Cool. So Grapevine.
Yeah.
14 years there, right? Or 11 and a half
No,
years?
11 and a half years in Grapevine. I started my career volunteering in Pilot Point and then worked in Highland Village for 4.5 years.
Yeah.
Full time, and then moved to Grapevine. So yeah.
How is Grapevines? How many stations should I say?
Yeah, we have 5 stations and 6 companies. One station is a double company house. We have 3 full-time medics, and then we put a 4th medic in service for like peak demand or festivals or holidays. So it's good. It's we got a lot of different like infrastructure in Grapevine. So we have highway, we got the lake, we got a lot of high-rise big resort buildings, and then we have your single home families and apartments. Lots of
it's
apartments,
all there.
just like everybody. There's apartments everywhere these days.
Cool. So y'all have an active peer team, right?
We do. Our peer team started formally started, I guess, in 2019. So I'm new to the peer team. I joined about a year ago.
Okay.
So
cool. Yep. That's awesome. Y'all run your own ambulance, right?
We do. Yes. So we're all firefighter, paramedic.
What is the call volume there yearly on average?
I think we're gonna probably hit 8,000 this year.
8,000.
Okay. Yeah.
So you're fairly busy, yeah. Yeah. That's cool.
Between 3 ambulances, they stay busy.
Oh, I bet they do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a little bit about your story. I mean, you can start where you want to start, and then we'll just kind of get into it and just have a conversation about it and share kind of what you've been through and where you're at now.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
So, my story is not that much different from pretty much any other first responders, right? I came into the fire service. I don't have family that has any experience in the fire service or any first responder. I just kind of always knew I needed something to be busy. I needed to be hands-on with whatever I chose to do. So I grew up, I was an athlete, played team sports, and really just loved that atmosphere of working together as a team. And so found the fire service and was like, this is it. This is my niche. And I know
how that goes.
Drawn to helping people. I liked the fact that it was hard. We had to work as a team. To accomplish a task and help somebody. And so I started in the fire service and loved it, lived it, breathed it every moment of every day. And I'm not unique to anybody else. I still have all my personal stuff. I have stuff I brought with me that I didn't even know from childhood and things like that, just like everybody else.
Yep.
I have, my personal life and losses and struggles and, all that stuff that still goes on while we're living living the first responder life.
Sure.
And so for me, it wasn't necessarily like just one call. It just kind of all over the years was stacking up, and so it was more of a slow decline.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was having some night terrors. I knew that I'd had those off and on since I was a kid,
Mm-hmm.
so I kind of understood those. Um, and then somewhere along the line, I got switched stations, and it was a more difficult station assignment.
Mm-hmm.
And those those relationships day in and day out at the fire station were very challenging. Um, and then you add in some tough calls at work that
Mm-hmm.
triggered some very similar losses in my personal life. Suicide calls are that for me, right? They're they're difficult for me. I have personal loss of suicide with family member in my life,
Mm-hmm.
and so all of a sudden my personal life and my work life collided
Collided. Yep.
collided and it caught me off guard. And this was um probably 2015, 2016,
Yeah.
2016, I guess, when that started, when that like collision happened. And flashbacks started. And um just I didn't know what to do with them. I have a great relationship with my husband, with my spouse. We've been together a long time, like you
And what does
said.
your husband? What does he do for a living? If you don't mind
And
me
my
asking.
he's a police officer.
Oh.
So,
Okay.
um, yeah, you would think. I mean, he gets it, right?
Yep.
He lives the first responder life. Um, but I think because the nature of some of my flashbacks and what I was dealing with was suicide calls, and it was his brother um, that we lost to suicide in
Okay.
2011.
Yeah.
And so I didn't feel like I could come home and have that conversation with him. And so I just was going at it alone, and just kept pushing through, and the flashbacks were increasing. Um, I would work out harder, try to stay super busy.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, well, if I'm busy and I'm tired from working out, then my brain won't play these tricks on me.
Sure.
And yeah, and so I just kept pushing through, um, but I could tell things were changing, but I didn't know what to do about it. And like I said, it wasn't all at once; it was slow. So my you know my relationships at the station for the fire department were becoming more difficult. So I
Mm-hmm.
didn't feel like I could turn there. I didn't want to, bring this home to my husband. And so I just slowly kind of started withdrawing. Um,
Right.
I wasn't as involved with honor guard stuff like I had always been. So I stepped back from that. Um, I didn't help with other fire department things. I was normally the first one to be there. Like I said, I lived it. It was every minute
Mm-hmm.
of my life.
Yeah.
Um, but I was just literally being attacked by these flashbacks and night terrors and not sleeping. Um, and then the rage started. And I didn't understand, because I could go to work and I wouldn't have any anger or rage towards people at work, but I'd come
Right.
home and rage out on my daughter and my husband. And
Yeah.
and then, after a rage episode, I'd have this guilt and everything else, and I would just totally disassociate. So
Yeah.
that became the only way I interacted with my family was
Right.
rage out against them, or keep them so far away I couldn't hurt them.
Yeah.
And I lost my sense of connection to people. I lost my sense of purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I was surrounded by people that I knew cared and loved me, but I was completely alone and had no idea how to reach out. I mean,
Yeah.
I was drowning without a life jacket and didn't even know where to turn to get one.
Mm-hmm.
So now the flashbacks are pretty much every day, and the flashbacks were not just past calls, but it was my loved ones' faces on those suicide patients.
Yep.
And then the night terrors, they changed, and they became about my husband and my daughter, and they were being attacked and killed, and I couldn't get there, and I couldn't save them,
Yeah.
and I just couldn't get away. I couldn't catch a break.
It doesn't discriminate.
So
Whether
no,
you're man, woman, whatever, it doesn't discriminate.
no, it doesn't, not at all. And I felt like I was destroying my family. Felt broken. I'd keep going to work, and try to make things better, but all the while knew I was completely falling apart and in pieces. And then, then you just start questioning, how can I come to work and try to help other people when I can't even help myself?
Yeah.
And so, I had seeked out a therapist on my own, because I was really afraid that if my fire department knew, I'd somehow be unfit for duty, or it was going to make my relationships at the fire station just that much more difficult. So I seeked out to a therapist and was trying to do what they were asking. I wasn't seeing any improvement. Things were still increasing. And then I
What kind
found
of therapy?
myself.
What kind of therapist did you go to? Was it a trauma therapist or just a?
She was a trauma therapist.
Was it
But I
somebody
think
that you found through peer group?
it was
I
somebody
mean,
that was referred to me. Yeah, that could work with first responders. But I don't know how many first responders they had worked with before. But
yeah.
part of it, I don't know that I was in the best of place to understand what therapy meant.
Sure.
What going to
Yeah.
counseling looked like, because I was such in the thick of the storm.
Mm-hmm.
And my guard was up. I didn't know how to even let them help me.
Right.
So, and things got bad enough that I felt like I had no way out. And
Mm-hmm.
so I found myself sitting in my truck with a gun to my head,
Yeah.
and for hours,
Mm-hmm.
and just rehearsed my suicide.
Yeah.
So it
That's a
was
tough
a
spot. Very
a
tough
very
spot
tough
to be at.
spot. It was really tough. Twofold. I felt like I was drowning and had nowhere to turn and didn't know how to get myself out. So I felt like the amount of damage I was causing my family, it would be better if I was gone. But
Mm-hmm.
on the flip side, because our family had been through that, I knew the amount of pain it was also going to inflict on my family.
Sure.
So it was tough. It was tough.
Yep. You're
But
not alone because I've been there, right? I mean,
yeah,
literally,
yeah.
I've been to that edge and it's scary as hell, right? To get to that place.
It's
It's not like you don't want to check out, but it's like you don't know what else to do. It's just like you're at a dead end, right? So I know
absolutely. And I
what
think,
you're saying.
I think there's a misconception around some of it that, you know, that it's the easy out, or,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that wasn't the case for me. Like, there was nothing easy about getting to that point sitting in my truck. There was
Hell
nothing
no, there's
easy.
not.
And it wasn't like a snap decision. Like, and I think that's what, and unless you've been there, it's hard for somebody to really understand.
Yeah.
So, but luckily, we're in the middle of COVID and there was an ammo shortage and I
Yep.
couldn't find a bullet. And I couldn't find a bullet that night. So,
That's not luckily. I don't think. It just
well,
wasn't
I
meant to
think,
be.
yeah,
So,
you're right.
yep.
So, but I knew something had to change. So I reached out to my therapist that night, or later, I guess the next day, and I had always promised her that I would, keep myself safe. That was part of an agreement I had to make with my therapist.
Sure.
Every
Yep.
session. And so when I reached out, I told her I can't promise to keep myself safe, and I don't know what to do and where to go. And so she made some phone calls, and they made arrangements for me to go check myself in inpatient.
Yep.
So I went, checked myself inpatient, and between inpatient and then being moved to a residential trauma facility, I was gone for 58 days. So
that's that move has got to be probably one of the hardest moves that you've probably ever made, I would think.
it was hard. I came home and packed a bag, kissed my husband and my daughter, told them I had to do this because I love them and I want to keep them safe.
Yep.
But I didn't realize that meant that I was going to be gone for 58 days in the middle of COVID.
Yep.
There's no family visits. There's very limited phone calls. So yeah. So but I did it, and the real work began.
Yep.
So, and it's ongoing work. Like, that's the other thing. It's not like I was gone 58 days and I came out healed. Woo, I'm healed. No, that 58 days was good. It taught me skills and gave me resources to, try to learn how to navigate what was kind of my new normal. So yeah. So that's a little bit about my story.
So
a lot
what
comes
year
up.
was that you went through all that? How long ago was it?
2020.
2020. Okay.
So 2020 is when I went, when I was in my truck, and then went inpatient.
Okay. So you come out of inpatient, and what was your next step after that?
Yeah. So
Did you go back on duty?
No, I'm gonna be 100% transparent. This is where our system is completely broken.
Bring it, because it needs to be heard.
So, I was terrified in my whole process that I was going to be, terminated or whatever. So I didn't reach out to my department initially. Those phone calls were made on my behalf, obviously, when I went inpatient. So they knew that I was inpatient. My husband was point of contact, and my department was great. They supported me.
Did you go through peer group, your peer team at
No,
that time? None of that was through
no,
peer team. Okay.
none of that was through the peer team.
But it
No,
was there. The peer team was there, right?
peer team was there.
Okay. You
I
just
did
didn't
not
utilize it.
access the peer team.
Yeah.
So the administrative chiefs in our department knew my situation, and they took care of me. They supported me on maintaining that I had a job and insurance and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I got out of inpatient, when I say the system's broken, like, they just release you. Okay, you're done. You're done with inpatient. We can't keep you anymore. Or you're done with residential. You completed the program. Go back to life as normal.
Yeah.
But life's not normal. For 60 days, I've been gone. So,
So what did that look like coming out?
my husband picked me up, and I had follow-up appointments set up and counselors. And I was not released to go back on duty. So, it meant my husband picked me up, and I came home to try to reintegrate to family life. And checked in with my counselors, my weekly appointments, and my doctor's appointments for medication weekly. And then I think about 2 or 3 weeks after I was out, they released me for light duty, for modified duty.
Okay.
So I did that for, I think, a month or so.
What did that entail? Your light duty position?
I worked in the office
Okay.
of fire administration.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
So I did that, and and like I said, my fire department was supportive. They were wanting to get me back on the line whenever I was ready. So in that aspect, it was good. I don't. It's no fault of anybody. I didn't reach out to the peer team, so my peer team didn't even know about my situation.
Yeah.
But it was a lonely, unknown road that I was navigating.
Sure.
And so, on the flip side, my husband didn't know how to navigate that either, So we just kept going, and I went back on shift and just continued therapy and all that stuff.
Yeah, like for me, I don't know, you probably watched my podcast, I'm sure you did, but a little bit about with me, I was off for the first time. I was off for 3 months and just kind of hit it. I didn't want anybody to know what really, some people knew what happened. But I basically blamed it on the kidney stone. Like, this is, this was part of it, but it was just weird how everything happened for me. And we had absolutely nothing through our department. I've talked about that as far as like peer support or anything like that. Guys supported me. My captain battalion chief supported me. Being out, basically same thing. Hey, you got a job. Don't worry about that. And I was using sick time. But, the second time that I went through, I was off for, from October all the way to February, off duty. So you're being pulled away from something that you really do love to do, right? Just because of the situation that you're in. And that kind of, in my opinion, it kind of compounds everything. So it makes it just a little more difficult because you're just not, that's your normal part of life, right? That's what you love to do. So
yeah, what isolates us?
Sure.
It's not just, I think for the fire department, it's not just that that's what we love to do. Like, even when those relationships aren't going great in the fire station, it's still our family. It's still where we go. All families are dysfunctional, and fire department is
no different.
No different. Like,
no different at all.
No different at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was before I got to the point where I went inpatient for 58 days. I had been off shift already for.
Had you?
Yes. So I was pulled off shift because things were compounding and getting worse.
Did
so it was a recommendation.
Do that?
No, it was a recommendation of my therapist.
Okay. Yeah.
pull me off shift, try to give me a break, try to get me doing some more therapies. And so I was doing that. I'd been off shift for April, May, June. So three months.
Yeah. What kind of
I
therapy
was
were you doing?
working. I was doing some EMDR. I was doing some
Cognitive
kind
behavioral?
of cognitive
Yep.
behavioral, and at that time I was doing some. They were trying to do some yoga type stuff with me
Mm-hmm.
because I was having a very difficult time, like even like naming what the emotions were
Sure.
and where I felt it in my body, and like I'd spent most of my life downplaying every struggle, um, and by
Yeah.
doing that, you don't
Numb
name
out.
anything. You just run from it.
Yeah.
So that was for me. I had to learn to even know what I was feeling.
Right. Yeah. So you come back, you're back on light duty. How many weeks was you on light duty?
When I came back from
Yeah.
inpatient, no, I did not go back to light duty for like 2 weeks after I
Okay.
got released. And then I was on light duty, I think a month or 6 weeks.
I got you.
Because at that point, between the first stint of light duty being gone inpatient, it was almost 6 months
Okay.
that I had been off,
Yeah. Completely off work
completely
or
off
off
work.
shift. Yeah.
Yeah, off shift.
So at what point did you go back on shift? Kind of run us through that, what it kind of looked like for you and what you were doing as far as like therapy wise.
So at that point, by the time I went back on shift, I was in a DBT skills group, which is I'm going to get it wrong, but diabolical behavioral therapy skills group.
What is that?
So it basically, I liked it for me because
Mhm.
it kind of was like a protocol book for lack of better terminology, but it was like a protocol book for like, okay, I'm completely out of control and I don't know where to start.
Mhm.
It just would give you like, you're going to do this skill and it's this step, this step, this step, and that'll regulate you. And then once you're in a more regulated state, then you can use this skill to help you figure out what the underlying emotion is, or how you need to navigate it.
Mhm.
So for me, it was very helpful,
Yeah.
because I could see that
Mhm.
it wasn't talking about fluffy clouds and this, that, and the other. It was very systematic,
Yep.
which is how my brain works as a
Sure.
firefighter.
Yeah.
And it just was beefing up my toolbox, man. That's what it was doing.
Yeah.
For most of my life, I'd been using the same tool for every application. Like, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Just shoving it down and trying to
Yeah.
hide it, basically. Yeah. And that's what a lot of us
So,
do, right? It's that,
yeah.
there again, it's that stigma and everything else that goes along with it, not wanting anybody to know that quote unquote weakness, or whatever it may be. It's just, you suck it up and you deal with it, right? And
Yep.
that's what's got to change. So, yeah, I get it.
Yep.
Yep. 100%.
So, so I was doing DBT skills group. I was still doing individual sessions with some occasional EMDR,
Hmm.
but it wasn't really working.
Yeah.
I didn't think at that time. And then I think that's it. Just medication
Yeah.
follow-ups and
Sure.
assessments. Um, so that's kind of what's going on therapy-wise. And then when I went back on shift, I went back. I had actually switched station assignments while I was off, which I know sounds kind of weird, but there was an opening at a station I was kind of hoping to go to, and so they let me go ahead and put in that bid for that. So when I came back, I went to that new station, and so it was kind of like a fresh start. And
I did the same thing. 17 years in, I switched shifts, and it was awesome. And it gave me it was like a totally fresh start, right?
Right.
But yeah, so I know how that can feel too. Absolutely, it was good for me. But even after that switch, that's when I had my second bout with this crap, right? Yeah. So it was like there was like all those underlying things were still there that I'd never really dealt with from the first time. It was just like I started taking medicine and everything was better. I didn't deal with the core issues, the traumas and everything else that I dealt with my whole life. So traumas, whatever you want, stressors, whatever you want to call them, And even with that shift swap and going to a totally different crew, I loved it. I needed it. But even with that, I still needed to deal with the issues that were underlying. So that's what it was for me. So yeah.
Yeah. I completely understand. I relate very similar. I think it's difficult for us to get to a point where we can feel safe enough, have enough trust in somebody to really work on some of those traumas.
Sure.
So I was very similar. I had a bigger toolbox of tools to use to navigate and went back to work, but it didn't mean I was healed. I was still having flashbacks. I was still having suicidal ideation. I mean, it never went all the way away.
Right.
It just wasn't so intense that I couldn't fight it, right? And so I was exhausted. I was exhausted every day. I was still every day in the battle 100%. So
I know what that's like too.
Yeah. And then you go back to work and you keep running calls, and so it just compounds stuff.
Yeah.
And for me, I think part of the hardest part of me transitioning back on shift for me was because I didn't go through our peer team. Even though I knew I had support of our administration and I had a job, I didn't know who to turn to or where to turn for support for the line guys, the guys I live with every day at the fire station. And and so that was a challenging piece for me because I still felt like I was kind of going at it alone. And I mean, Matt, I'm sure you know as well as I do, like these battles that they're not meant for anybody to do alone.
No.
We can't fight these alone.
No. You got to have support. And I think that's probably one of the hardest parts is, coming back on shift and guys just not understanding. It's not like they don't care about you. It's just they don't understand the depth of it. You know what I'm saying? I know you do.
Right.
But it's very hard to explain it, right? You just got to have grace sometimes on the people that are going through it. And that's what I think, if anything else, something that I still am learning, but you got to have grace, because you never know what somebody is going through. The dude that blows up and, cusses every single member out in the fire, laugh because it happens all the time. But, and you're thinking, man, this dude is just straight up asshole, whatever, Well, you know what? Have a little bit of grace because you don't know what that dude's going through, right? Or that you just don't know. I mean, you never know what somebody's going through. And it's very hard to explain that to somebody that has not dealt with that issue, right? And what's crazy is I think a lot of us have, every one of us to one degree or another are dealing with those issues. Just some of us are a little further in those issues, and we've recognized it.
No, absolutely. And it just, there's an old adage that the two things, firefighters don't like: change and staying the same.
Yep.
Right? So it's the same thing with this. We're really good in the fire service at somewhat accepting anger and blow-ups, right?
Yeah.
But we deal with people on their worst day. We see some of the worst carnage of really bad decisions that people make in life. So nobody questions why we would be angry.
Right.
So
Yeah.
So that's an emotion most of us, I think, are comfortable with. We're comfortable seeing at the fire station. But when you dig down, like, we can't ostracize those who don't use anger, right?
Mm-mm.
Because it's still the same. We're still having to deal with all the same shit as everybody else.
Yep. Some of us are just a little further ahead of others, if that makes sense. It's like, I mean, you could have a dude. Like, I've interviewed a guy a couple of weeks ago that he's 7 years in. You know what I'm saying? And 7 years in, and already been through this crap. So I mean, obviously, if you listen to his story, he brought stuff in with him as he, as a kid and coming up, and then it just like you start stacking on top of stuff that you already have when you come into the fire service. And that's what it was for me. I mean, I had stuff in my past, nothing horrible. It was just traumas, or stressors throughout my life as a kid and growing up. But then I bring that into the fire service, and everything was fine. I mean, I was dealing with those issues, and they were in my cup, so to speak. And then you start stacking stuff on top of it, the stuff that we see, just everyday life of being a firefighter and everything else, being a father, being a husband, you name it. I mean, just everything. You start stacking all those things on top of the traumas that you already had through life, and eventually, it can overflow on you, so to speak.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing is we don't know when that's going to be. Like you said, it could be 7 years on the job. You could be 30 years on the job.
Yep.
It doesn't matter. And I don't, nobody's going to come out of this career unscathed from
I don't
something.
think you do. I don't think you do. No.
You just don't.
Mm-mm.
And
It's how you deal with it while you're in this career is what makes a difference. And doing
absolutely.
what we're doing right now, and you getting out here and sharing your story, me sharing my story, and the people that are getting on this and numerous other things, it's everything, just education, and letting guys know that, hey, this crap can happen to you, and there are ways to combat it, and we got to get ahead of that ball game. If you do carry, 19 years of stuff in or 20 years in coming to a career as a firefighter, and you're carrying baggage with you, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just life. But if we can educate you to a point to where you build in that resiliency, so you're constantly getting that stuff off of you and having healthy avenues, that to me is where it's going to change the fire service as far as the mental health aspect of it.
Absolutely.
So,
I am right there with you. So
yeah.
I know resiliency is a big buzzword right now, right? And everybody talks about resiliency. But I think what we, sometimes forget is I think firefighters are sometimes the most resilient people, like
We
just
are.
naturally. Like we already innately have that in us. But
Yep.
what we don't do, what we fail to do, is we don't give each other tools from the beginning so that we can continue to grow and navigate that resiliency through our career.
Yep.
It's no different. We train all the time in the fire service on the what if.
Yep.
That is the nature of our game. What if? What if this
Yep.
happens? We're going to do this. What if we go to this? Then it's going to look like this. Yet, I'm sure it was the same for you. When I got into this, nobody told me what if my mental health Nothing.
Nothing.
So
Absolutely nothing.
we got to change that.
It
That
wasn't
that has
talked
to be
about.
changed.
Yeah.
No, not at all.
And that's
My
what I'm
first
trying
pediatrics
to,
drowning I went to, I had 2 years, if that.
Mhm. Yeah.
I come back, 11-month-old baby, dead.
Hmm. Yep.
I didn't know what to do. I was 25. I'd never seen that.
Hmm.
I'm looking to the older guys. They didn't say a word. Chief came in and said, "Hey, heard you had a tough one. Sorry." Walked out. And that's no fault of anybody. That's just how it was.
Yeah.
And we can't keep making those same. We can't keep those same patterns. I'm
No,
not
we
even going to
cannot.
say it's necessarily a mistake because I don't think the education was there. So,
Hmm.
you know,
Well,
but we
the
have.
tools that we had even back then, we didn't utilize for most fire departments, right? Something as
Right.
simple as SISM, doing a, a debriefing or a diffusing or anything like that. It's like, I mean, I learned about that in rookie school when I went to academy, right? I learned about SISM in academy.
Well, I
Maybe
read it
like,
in a book. I
yeah,
read it in a
maybe
book.
less than a day that we talked about it, but I
Yeah.
knew about SISM, right? But it's like we just did not utilize it unless it was like a major event, and it had to be like a major event. I can tell you this: the first time that I did a SISM, a real SISM, was after I got back from my second time. We had a fatality accident, multiple fatalities, mother and some kids on the highway, and one of the worst ones I've been on in 20 years, 21 years, and I just got back on duty, right? And everybody's looking at me like, oh crap, I'm sure they're thinking this, is he going to be able to do this? Which I did. I mean, I went into that mode and I did exactly what I needed to do. I had to check myself and just use some tools that I'd learned while I was out.
Right.
And after that accident kind of got under control and we got people where they needed to be and patients where they needed to be and stuff like that, I went up to the battalion chief and was like, hey, we need to call somebody in for this, you know? And he's like, do you know somebody? I'm like, yep, I'm on it. So I called 3FTO, which that's who I went through whenever I went through my stuff, and talked to Jen and was like, hey, do you have somebody that can come in and do a SISM for us or a debriefing or diffusing or whatever? And she's like, absolutely. So within a couple of days they were there doing it, and it was like awesome, because everybody that was on that accident scene was in there, and they all kind of gave their part just like it's supposed to work, right? And um not saying that it made everything go away. It wasn't like a quick cure. Everybody's good
Right.
now because, you know, but it gave us the ability to be able to put that everything together and see the whole scene as a whole, right? And
Mm-hmm.
stuff that was happening and just kind of complete that story a little bit. And it was awesome. Everybody talked a little bit, and um I mean, there were guys that were still kind of struggling with stuff, and said, hey, these are the resources that we have now. And we didn't even have readiness group then. It was before our oversight was there with readiness group, but I had built up some resources to that point. Our peer team was like in the very early stages of getting started. So um, it worked exactly like it was supposed to, right? Work that off your
Yeah.
plate, and not saying you're still not going to struggle a little bit with it, because I mean, you're human, you're going to. So,
Right.
but that to me is where it's got to change. We have to utilize the tools that we have and not be afraid to say, hey, I'm a little jacked up and I need some help. Breaking that stigma.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm going to get off my box and let you continue now.
No, I got the same box. My
Yeah.
analogy is, we take a fire truck that's a rolling toolbox to an incident because we don't know what we're gonna need till we get
You
there,
never know
right?
what you're going to need. Yep.
That saw may work 90% of the time, but we're at that 10% scenario where we need something different. And
Sure.
and and honestly, our mental health is no different.
No.
our journey of, resiliency and mental health, so that we can come out of this career and um, and still be able to have meaningful relationships with the normal public.
Mhm. Yeah.
we we got to have those tools,
Yep.
and we've come a long way, but we still got some work to do.
Yeah.
And just like you said in your story, guys were looking at you when you rolled up on that wreck, like, oh no, what's gonna happen?
Yep.
That's part of it too. That's got to change too.
Yeah.
Check in with your people just like we always have, but
Hmm.
I'm not contagious.
No.
I don't have a disease or something that you're gonna get. Like, just because I've had a bout with mental health where I had to lean into these resources,
Hmm.
doesn't mean I'm not capable of my job. Doesn't mean that if you talk to me, it's gonna rub off on you.
Nope. Yeah.
So
I understand that 100% because I've dealt with
yeah,
it, you know.
exactly.
So keep your head up because you know better. I know better, right?
Yeah,
So
and it's just having these conversations with you and getting the word out there. Because, like you
yeah,
said, there's so many of us that are still suffering in silence. Like I was
yeah, I
several
agree.
years before I
That's where
got
that
to my
great.
breaking point.
That's where that grace comes in, right? It's like it's very hard for me sometimes. The grace end of it. You know, I have to constantly check myself. But it's just you got to have a little bit of grace, man. Sometimes, and just I've been there, and even being there, it's hard sometimes to say, you know what, that dude he may be dealing with crap that I don't know about, right? So let's see if we can get to the core of that, and if he needs help, get him some help, whatever it may be. You know,
Help looks different for everybody. It's
sure it
all
does.
different levels.
Yeah,
So where I am today, I mean, I'm I'm in a much better spot, but I'm not, completely healed up. It's a journey. There's a reason they call it a healing journey.
sure.
Um, there's ups and there's downs, and so I know what I need to do. I'm learning every day more about myself and how to navigate those things and break through some of those past traumas. Like you said, I'm no different. I brought
Yep,
my share of past traumas before my fire service career even began,
sure.
and so breaking through those, along with you know 15 years worth of calls and building that support system. Um,
Hmm.
you know, talking to you, checking in with my spouse, my other family outside of the fire service. And for me, the hardest part is learning to trust and allow my brothers and sisters in the fire service to be there for me. Like
Yeah.
that's that's been the hard part for me.
You may
Um,
tell you a secret. Don't tell nobody. I still deal with the same thing.
yeah,
It's tough.
I know,
It's
but
tough. I know it
some
is.
of that is some of that I think is our own protectiveness that we carry. Um, but yeah, I mean I've fortunate, unfortunate. My journey, I've utilized a lot of resources.
Yeah,
So I can throw a bunch of different options out there. Some worked for me, some didn't. You know,
sure.
um, EMDR without the tappers was not that effective for me. I didn't know that until I did EMDR with tappers. Um,
See, that's all
Equine
I ever did.
therapy, yeah, equine
I've always
therapy
done that.
is
Yeah,
is great for me. Um,
really.
there's something about that connection with the horse, and it is like one of the few times I feel like I can totally check in with myself in a vulnerable state and feel safe. I think because there's a 2,000-pound animal that I know's got my back. But
Right. Yeah.
um,
Where do you
but
do that
yeah,
at? The equine
I
therapy.
I do that with our watch.
Okay.
So
Yeah. I think there's a couple places that do that equine therapy.
there
I've
is. I
heard.
think there's another place down like Midlothian or
Yeah,
somewhere.
that's down in my area. Yeah.
Pause or something. Pause for reflection.
That's it. Yep.
Yeah,
So,
pause for reflection. And then there's our watch, which is kind of up in Denton County.
mhm.
Um, so yeah,
Yeah, it's an everyday deal. I mean, for me, it's like I still have good days. I have bad days. You're still seeing those everyday traumas, stressors, whatever you want to call them. You're still
mm-hmm.
dealing with the fire department life, which that can be a struggle sometimes in itself. We all know that. And
Yep,
you stick that on top of everything else. And I mean, it can still be a daily struggle. I mean, it's just the way it is.
yeah,
You know, I mean, it's not like it's just going to magically go away. Or at least it didn't for me. You know,
yeah, no,
I still
me
have good days
neither.
and bad days. So,
But the
you're
biggest thing
back
is
on.
like you
Go ahead.
said, just building that support so that
Hmm.
when you do have those bad days, you can reach out.
Yeah. Yep. So you're back on duty,
Yep,
rocking and rolling, still going through some therapy, just like me. You
yep,
know, I mean, you know, maybe not as frequently as I used to, but when I need it, I'll go. I don't even hesitate. And I'll know sometimes it may take me a week or two to say, dang man, I need to go talk to my therapist, to unload some of this stuff,
yeah,
And it doesn't have to be major traumas that send me into that. It can just be life in general, right? I know that
yep,
how valuable that tool is for me. It is going back to therapy. I think everybody should go to therapy just to be able to offload the crap that we go through just in life in general, especially with the
mm-hmm.
way the world is today. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I will say, as far as for me and um, part of my healing journey, um, I was rocking and rolling for a little while. I'm sure you've had the same thing, and then kind of plateaued out, and I just felt like I was stuck. I wasn't getting a lot of movement, and
hmm
and then I almost started like regressing, and I was regressing like fast, rapid, and
yeah,
but this time I knew that's what was going on, um, and so I had to regroup and I had to rethink and come, with my clinicians and my therapist and be like, what the heck, and so part of that for me was I've started seeing a functional neurologist,
hmm
because there was a missing piece for me, that I didn't even realize impacted me, and that was as a kid, um, being a competitive athlete and stuff like that. I had lots of concussions,
mm,
and that was back in the day when concussion on Saturday and you're good to go Tuesday. You played. Um,
yeah,
we didn't have all the concussion protocols and this, that, and the other, and
right,
so I think between the age of my first one was like at 19 months old. Um, Climbed up on a counter and fell off backwards. And then to the age 12, I think I had 7 or 8 concussions.
really,
So, and I didn't understand that that could even impact my mental health
that's
journey.
interesting. Yeah, I've never thought about
And
that, but
so for me, that was a piece of the puzzle that was kind of put together earlier this year. And so I've been working with a functional neurologist, um, to because there was parts of my brain that just more or less didn't they never got as strong as they should have been
mm,
because of the concussions, and so that's part of what we do, and that's done through like exercises. So
what do they do?
different
I mean,
So it's different movement exercises where they have you do different movements that isolates like a part of that brain that is weaker.
Okay.
So it's weird, man. I'm just gonna tell you, it's weird, but it works.
EMDR is weird for me.
Yeah. So
So
it
is
works, but
yeah,
um, but like he would ask me to do like a simple test, like walk in a straight line, heel to toe, you know, with my eyes closed, almost like a drunk driving test.
yeah,
And I'm sober, and I can't do it. Like I'm falling over one
really,
way or the other. And because he made me close my eyes. So when he took that vision away, my brain didn't know how to
yeah.
work. And
Wow, that's
so
interesting.
they kind of know how to do different assessments and things like that. And then like I said, the exercises I do are specific to like re-engaging that particular part of the brain.
Okay, almost like
So
rewiring the neural pathways. Is that what it does?
that's exactly what it's doing. It's
Okay.
doing that to help you on a like I guess physical level, but it's helped me with everything. It's helped me be able to break down some walls in therapy. It's
Mm-hmm.
helped me come out of a rage episode faster.
Yep.
Um, because I would go into one like super fast and then I couldn't come out, like, and it all plays a part, right? Those
So
neural
do they
pathways.
consider that? Do they consider that a TBI? Is that what they call it?
Yeah. Yes.
Traumatic brain injury.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Several concussions will be that. So,
That's interesting. I'd like to learn more about
and
that.
the reason I mention it is because, um, my system kind of went haywire like a year ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought I was going crazy. Like,
Yeah.
because every doctor I went to, they'd run blood work, and they're like, "Nope, you're fine.
Everything's fine.
Everything's
Can't tell you
fine."
how many
And
times I've heard that.
yeah, and because I have a history with mental health, they're trying to tell me it was just like psychosomatic, and I'm like, I don't know. So,
Yeah.
so sometimes, in our journey, like we have to be our own advocate
Yeah.
and keep pushing when
That's what
something's
it was
not
for me for a long time.
not going right. Yeah, because
Yeah.
they were, I was having stomach problems and a rash and hair loss and like weird stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And as a paramedic, I'm like, oh, this is medical.
Yeah.
It is medical from past TBIs that were never treated.
That's very interesting. We got to do some more talking about that. I'm very interested in that for real. Yeah.
Yeah, but I
Okay.
mean, so it's just puzzle pieces,
Yeah.
and toolbox.
Yep. So kind of coming to a end. What do you want to share? And just kind of tell us like where you're at now, right now in this time and how you're doing and what you got coming up kind of things.
All right. Let's see. So I guess the biggest thing is, by having these conversations, if there's one person out there that's drowning and doesn't know how to find a life jacket or where the shore is, um, reach out. There's plenty of people that are here willing and can help you with resources. And
Yep.
on the flip side of that, to my brothers and sisters that are first responders that maybe aren't drowning themselves, don't be afraid if we see one of our own drowning, like reach out. Reach out.
Yep.
Because we can't do it alone.
Mm-hmm.
We can't do it alone. And that's, for me, that's the biggest thing that keeps coming back for me. I think that's why I joined the peer team. That's why I agreed to be on here with you, and be talk about my experience
Sure.
is because I don't want somebody to have to walk that journey alone. And I want to build our peer team resources and so that it's not taboo and so
Yep.
that it's like every day.
Mhm.
It's no different than saying we're going to get up and go for a run. So yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. We got some good things with our peer team coming up. We got a vendor conference for the 14 cities in the NEFTA region that we're going to showcase. We're going to showcase those vendors. And yeah, just learning what I can so that I can be there for somebody else.
What kind of personal things you got going on? Like any kind of talks or anything like that coming up?
Not really. I mean, I'm going to be on a discussion panel for our conference, our vendor conference.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm trying to, learn as much as I can and
Keep telling your story. That's
keep
where it's
telling my
at.
story. Okay.
Keep telling your story. It's going to be impactful. It already is. People need to hear your story because I promise you there's other people out there that are going through similar stuff to what both of us have gone through. I've talked to them. I know they're out there, and it's not easy. It's still difficult sometimes for me to face up to what I've been through, but to me, it's part of my healing. People need to know it's tearing that stigma down and letting them know, hey man, sometimes you get in a bad spot, and it's okay. It's okay to get in that bad spot. You just can't stay there. So, and the resources are there to get you out of that spot. It may take a little while. Doesn't make it completely go away, but you'll get the tools to be able to deal with it on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what it is for me. So,
I mean, my thought is some of our greatest successes come from the learnings of our shortcomings, right?
mhm.
Whatever that looks like. And
Sure.
so just
I
make the
couldn't agree
place
more.
better make the place better one day at a time.
Sure. Yep. So anything else you want to add?
No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for letting me come on here and talk with you.
Thank you. Thank you for trusting me and being willing to just be vulnerable and open up and drop the truth. That's what it's about. Letting people know that, hey,
Yes, sir.
it's real. It can happen. And you just got to get out there and do what you got to do to get on the other side of it. Right.
Yep.
So with that, anybody out there that's struggling, having suicidal thoughts or anything like that, 988, the Suicide Crisis Lifeline. Don't be afraid to reach out. I mean, that's just one resource of many. Feel like you can't call that number, get a hold of me, freeburn2023@gmail.com. Social media, we're on just about every platform. You can find me, reach out, and if I can't get you to the right place, probably know somebody that can. So I will do everything in my power to do what I can to get you to the right spot or find you the right person to get you that spot. So don't be afraid to reach out. And the brothers and sisters out there, may know your people, know your brothers and sisters that you work with. Have some grace on them, when they're going through bad times or having bad times. You don't know what they're going through, so it's very hard to do sometimes. I've been on both sides of that, but have some grace, have some love. Let's get back to that family oriented fire service and just keep kicking it every single day, burning that stigma one podcast at a time.
Yes,
Thank you,
sir.
Amber. Thank you for coming on and sharing.
Yes,
All
sir.
right.
Thank you.
We'll keep in touch.
All right. Bye.
All right. Thanks for tuning in to the Freeburn 2023 podcast. If you or somebody you know is in crisis, reach out to the Suicide Crisis Lifeline at 988. Or if you're looking for counseling resources, contact us at freeburn2023@gmail.com. We'll do our best to get you to where you need to be. Let's keep burning that stigma, one podcast at a time.